Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight, we would like to focus on the issue of the MDC leaders. Let me state from the outside, the number one reason the people of Zimbabwe have risked their livelihoods, limbs, and even lives, human lives, to elect MDC CCC leaders these last 25 years is so that they would implement the democratic reforms to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. That should be made very clear. And anyone who doesn't understand that cannot understand what follows. So get that one fixed. That is the primary purpose of the MDC. Opposition parties in a healthy and functioning democratic nation, they are there to hold the governing party to account and maybe to offer alternative policies. In Zimbabwe, the opposition, their number one purpose has been to implement the democratic reforms to get Zimbabwe back on a democratic footing. That has been their number one purpose. So, having said that, one has got to say, okay, MDC were elected as far back as 1999. And the name itself said it all. We are a movement for democratic change. They were promising the nation they would deliver the democratic changes. The question is, Zanu PF is still able to blatantly rig elections to this day, 25 years later, including the 5 years in the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so. The question has to be asked, why is it that they have failed to implement the democratic reforms all these years? And the answers are beginning to filter through. Some of us have said MDC leaders were bribed, particularly during the GNU, with the trappings of high office, the E-class Mercedes-Benz, the very generous salary and allowances, or for the MPs, senators, deputy ministers, ministers, prime minister, etc., etc. But now it's turning out that they were also bribed by something more substantial. All the leaders were given farms. There have been 3 different videos circulating on the media this last week, all claiming the same thing, that the MDC leaders received funds. I would just like to play the first one of those videos to get us going.
But amana kumba kugombeza rangu reria mana so but munhu asina imba atete kurara musango, so opposition inomeka sure kuti vanhu vaya vawane minda. But may he so rest in peace vatsvangirai prazi ravo vanga vainaro Chamisa anaro
ane famu
kana azoramba ndoenda newe ane famu I know madress munhu anetsa kuti focha but anaro chakudza off camera.
Okay,
ane mine ane makasiwo.
Yeah?
Yes. Biti ane plus hauna kumboona here picture yabita achitenga mombe kuna Temba Mliswa dzekuisa kuplus. One of the biggest beef producers in the Matabeleland region, the Washman Ngwe.
Okay.
Yes, ane plus anautenga beneficiary land reform. But what they did is to discourage their people from acquiring my farms because why is out munakaona something chapiwa nehurumende achapikisa.
Are you for real, Mr. Chamisa?
No mfunza Washman Ngwe kuti haasi kuita beef here, producer beef here.
Benjamin, what do you think of that?
Oh, well, good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I mean, we've been saying this all along, and it's not a good thing to be right in this case, because the evidence was clear from long back. It's just that the people of Zimbabwe have been very slow in catching on what was really happening and what is really happening right here. And I have been saying the similarities between Zanu PF and the opposition MDC-CCC is shocking. They share the same DNA right through. In fact, it's 99.99%. So here we have an opposition that clearly is not opposing anything, but rather is benefiting from the regime. And our people have not yet realized it. And in fact, some, even when they see this, they will defend furiously and vigorously. But yet the evidence is right there. And I believe this is true. The reason is these so-called opposition have been always adamant about participating in rigged elections to keep the status quo. They were never in it to win anything. They were there to get their share of the spoils. When you question why are you participating, they will tell you these are liberated zones. These are hard-earned seats. We sacrificed our money for it. It's clear as daylight. I really do not get where our problem is as the people. Why have we failed to understand this? Or why don't we want to understand this? Because I think with so much evidence, it's now a matter of we just don't want. It's not that we don't know.
Well, I'll be honest. Until I saw those videos, I didn't know that any of the MDC leaders had farms. I think I've seen an article, but I can't be certain of it now, where somebody was talking of Monzora being given a Mercedes-Benz and a farm. But other than that one, I didn't know that the rest of the leadership, including Tsvangirai himself, got a farm. I thought the highest value thing that Tsvangirai ever got was the US $4 million mansion in Highlands. But now this is shedding a completely new light. Am I surprised? To be quite honest, I'm not surprised at all. I think this would explain why the MDC Triple C leaders have been playing this double game where they want to appear as if they're fighting the Zanu PF. And yet when it comes to the crunch, we expect them to stand up and do something, they've been very disappointing. The greatest opportunity for MDC to really dismantle the Zanu PF dictatorship was during the GNU. They had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms. 5 years. And for some of you who are not familiar with how they were supposed to implement those reforms, any member of parliament, senator, or the deputy prime ministers, deputy ministers, the deputy prime minister, and the prime minister Moge Tsvangirai himself, any one of those leaders could propose the democratic reform in parliament. Any one of them. The proposal could be submitted by anyone. Some people have said, oh, it was supposed to be done by the relevant ministry. No, that is not true. Reforms could be submitted by anyone. And they had 5 years to do so. There were over 110 members of parliament from MDC-T and MDC-N in the GNU. They were the majority in the cabinet. And yet, in 5 years, they failed to implement, to submit even one reform proposal. It was unbelievable. It just didn't make any sense at all. But when you start hearing stories like this, click. It all starts making sense. One Zanu PF crony was asked during the GNU, why are MDC leaders not implementing any reforms? And he said, Mazwane MDC aziza kuchuka nyerere. MDC leaders have learned to enjoy the benefits of being on the gravy train. They will not implement reforms. He did expand on what those benefits are. And it never occurred to some of us that they extended beyond the office benefits of the E-Class Mercedes-Benz and the generous salary and so forth. But when you hear about these farms, it all starts making sense.
No, I won't give them the benefit of the doubt, even if it wasn't about the farms. I have seen how they carry on, even when Zanu PF or when they have entered, the gravy train. Let's say they've won, a few seats in parliament. MDC Triple C has never shied away from accepting high-end products from Zanu PF. Once they get into parliament, they want top of the range cars, despite the economy failing. They will tell you, look, they're buying cars, those Zanu PF cars, the ones that we see with stickers. But they're not going to say that they are also driving some of them. They will not say that. but they're very much taking, and the people are suffering. It's hypocrisy. When did one ever say, no, I'm not taking this car. I'm going to donate that earning to such and such a hospital. That's how you set an example. But no. In fact, they want 2 cars now. Yeah. They want bush allowance to go to Harare. They want to stay in hotels. They don't want, government to build houses, accommodation for them in Harare. They want to stay in hotels. Where is the difference between Zanu PF and MDC, Triple C? There is none. We got to be honest. It's not about the farms. The farms, well, it could have been, hidden forever. But the fact that they are doing exactly and partaking of, I mean, Zimbabwe had just come from 2008 and it was broken and broke. So Morgan Changira accepting a $4 million house. Then you have the nerve to go and say Zanu PF is spending big on cars and so forth, when you yourself are taking part of it. Yet look back, how many people lost their loved ones? How many people got their properties damaged, burnt during the rerun? Operation Mavotera Papi. Operation Where Did You put your vote? How many people lost livelihoods? And when MDC Triple C was in government, they never did any single thing for those people. Hypocrisy. That is exactly who they are. They are hypocrites. They say don't do this, don't do that, yet they are doing. Don't take this Zanu PF land, it's got blood and what? They don't mind the blood themselves. We need to wake up.
Well, I'd like to play the next video clip, and I'd like people to pay attention to what he is saying regarding how MDC Triple C leaders have been discouraging ordinary Zimbabweans getting in on the act, getting some of these farms too.
Hatidi kutongwa neanoda, toda kutongwa neakajaira. Hanti ndizvozvo. Kutonga kunoda akajaira. Saka muchatukwa mugotukwa mugonzi maenda ikoko muri kutsvaga mari. Alright, tomboti ndizvo asiri kuitsvaga ndiani. Because ari kuti uya hurumende ngaibve. Ari kuti ngaibve tipinde isusu kuti uite sei uwane mari. Saka isusu ro tibude pamari kuti wopinde pamari. Zvinobuda. Saka aiwa ndakaudza vana musuno wekuti musa poromiswe kuti hurumende ichauya ichakupfumisai. Muchiudzwa nemunhu akapfuma kare, hakuna opposition leader anogara kumhiri kwaSamora kunoku. Vese vamunoona vari 27 vanokorera mapresident, vese vane dzimba kupi uko. Vakaiita sei mariyo? Hakuna opposition leader asina plus. Vakawana kupi maplus iwa. Asi chavanogona ndechekuudza mamemba kuti musatore maplus. Because kana ukatora plus uchazorima ukaguta, kana waguta usina hasha. Saka gara usina plus, uite hasha, utuke hurumende, uende unovhota, uende kudemonstration. Ndosaka iye munhu opposition aende kudemo, haadi kutemerwa mota yake nyowani. Haadi kutemwa nematombo because business rinozobroka. Anoda munhu ane hasha nenzara, waakaitisa nzara iye kuti enda pafront. Saka isusu dingindira redu tinopfuma nehurumende iripo. zvepromise yekunzi mirirai yedu kuti mugopfuma aiwa izvo hatina shuwa nazvo. Hatidi kutongwa neanoda, toda kutongwa neakajaira. Handiti ndizvozvo. Kutonga kunoda akajaira. Ndosaka muchiona munyika mune runyararo kudai. Zvakaitika kuVenezuela uko. Vamaduro vatorwa. Opposition leader anga aripo achibva anyora kuti right, we are ready to take over. Kuti tichamboitonga tega. Handi mazvona? Saka ngatiite zvinhu zvinofambisa nyika yedu kumberi. Pana vamwe nechekutaura. Yes, Baba.
I'd like to emphasize that point. We should be very clear what has been going on here. Ever since independence, Zanu PF has deliberately kept millions of ordinary Zimbabweans poor for the sake of political advantage. The most clear-cut case concerns the rural area. Before independence, the people in the rural areas were denied title deeds to any land. Land was held in trust, tribal trust. That's why it's called tribal trust lands. I've said it on a number of occasions on this platform that a renowned economist, John Robertson, advised Ian Smith before independence that if you were to give the rural blacks title deeds to the land on which their mud huts are built, they will build for themselves decent homes. Because when you've got title deeds, you can go to the bank and get a loan to build a decent home. When you don't have title deeds, the bank will say, if you should fail to pay, we can't sell that house because the land does not belong to you. John Robertson explained at great length the economic advantages that will be derived from giving people title deeds. People will be able to build themselves decent homes. They'll be able to improve that piece of land by planting fruit trees, digging wells, etc. Ian Smith said no. Why? His argument was, if I give the blacks if I economically empower them, the next thing they would want is political empowerment. He was not prepared to give the blacks the right to vote. That was the only reason why he refused. After independence, the same John Robertson took the same plan to Mugabe and company. And they too rejected it. And for the same reason, for the same selfish political reason. They did not want to economically empower the masses, the poor, the peasants, for political reasons. This is not only me saying it. Here is Margaret Dongo emphasizing on that point.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite, and and the so-called investors. Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
To come back to the argument the gentleman was making here, MDC CCC leaders have done nothing ever since they got into power to economically empower the ordinary people, because they wanted them to remain politically weak. Both Zanu PF and MDC are conniving in keeping the masses of Zimbabweans poor. That is the truth of the matter. There is absolutely no excuse why in this, the 21st century, anyone should find themselves living in a mud hut like that, particularly for a country like Zimbabwe. That was, even at the time of independence, an upper middle income nation in terms of the wealth. If the wealth had been generated, distributed evenly during Smith's time, the people would have built for themselves a decent home. But even after independence, if Zanu PF had given the people title deeds, I bet you many, many, many more people in Zimbabwe in the rural areas today would not be living in a mud hut. The opposition, the people have elected the opposition to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. And this is one of those areas where they're supposed to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. But they've done nothing as long as they are getting a seat on the gravy train, on the gravy train. That is the tragedy of what we are talking about here. MDC leaders have been conniving with Zanu PF to keep the majority of ordinary Zimbabweans poor.
The floodgates of manipulation are open. And unfortunately, it is the people that are found in between. For a very long time, we've been talking about, how MDC CCC has failed the people. And some have even come onto this program and defended their position. But now, with such evidence, clearly the intentions are out there for anybody who chooses. You have to make that choice to see or not. But the evidence will remain there. there is a benefit of keeping people downtrodden because they now look up to you for survival, and you can now mold them and twist them and manipulate them to do your bidding. And we've seen this with Zanu PF. Zanu PF does not hide it. And for years, they've been manipulating the rural people by denying them the land in which their hearts and their livestock and family live on. And there now we have Triple C MDC who has said, don't take of the devil, for it is what? For it is dirty and it's got blood. But in the middle of the night, they went and took their own share. And the reason we have been given, and the reason is very, very, true. Let's keep them, like how Margaret Dongo says, let's keep them poor together. You keep your half poor, I keep my half poor, and we twist them every election. And we what? We continue with this here favorable relationship. It's a very favorable relationship. I mean, if you come to think of it, why would you keep participating in rigged elections? Why would you not field agents all over, even though the same people have given you the money? It was calculated. There has to be an agreement between Zanu PF, MDC, and Triple C. There has to be an agreement. And I've always said, even when Sadak came and knocked on MDC's door, on Changirai's door, to say, hey, you need to implement the reforms, Changirai kept himself inside his house. And when it was daybreak, he went and he reported Sadak to Mugabe. That is exactly what happened. So we cannot say they were stopped by Zanu PF. No, they had an agreement with Zanu PF that nothing was to be done to break this relationship, and that we will continue sharing the spoils. And unfortunately, like I said, the people of Zimbabwe have been slow, and sometimes they have been vigorously denying the truth. They have been defending the same people that have been causing their suffering. And again, I say, the choice would be ours. My choice and your choice to look the truth in the eye. Face it. This is what has been happening. And from there, we can now start forging a way out. Because clearly, these ones are corrupted. They have the same disease. They are the same person. They share the same DNA. We need to let them go. We need to start a new thing. And the new thing is we still have the problem with rigged elections. And without free, fair, and credible elections, there will be no success story to Zimbabwe. We are kidding ourselves that we can form a new party that will go and challenge ZANU and Triple C and all the others in an election. The elections are flawed. Let's fix that first. Then we can go and challenge. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to say that if any of the listeners want to join us, you're welcome. You can use the link that is being shown at the bottom of your screen there to express your views. I would like to now play a third video on the same theme of the farms. Here is somebody else saying exactly what we had in the first two videos about opposition leaders having farms.
Received a farm in Marondia. Well, everybody need land, isn't it? But don't you think it was too early for him to receive land from Zanu PF when millions of people, they were still hoping that he would be the next president? And even worse, his wife received another farm in Chegutu. And the Zanu PF government, they gave Yemad, the wife of Nelson Chamisa, and she's making a very, very successful chicken business. One family. So we used to say bad things about Zanu PF, that these guys are so bad. One man can take 21 farms, 40 farms. One man can take other white men's big businesses. One man can take one man can take all these mining businesses, the industry, the shops, the banks. They can even load to the Reserve Bank and nothing happened to them. I did not know that our own champions, they were going to be shareholders as far as to all the other members of opposition who are opposition members in parliament. They received big cash, big man. And it has become a tradition whereby opposition leaders, they work hand in hand with the Zanu PF, especially when it comes to abusing and misusing taxpayers' money.
I'll stop it there. I think the important point here that must be remembered is that the people of Zimbabwe have risked everything to elect the opposition members so that they would implement the democratic reforms and designed to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. These farms and all these other trappings, there's been rumors that the opposition leaders were also receiving a lot of money. No doubt, with time, some of those truths will come out. No doubt, with time, we'll also know that these farmers, these opposition leaders who got these farms, they were also benefiting from the command agriculture, for instance. But what is important here is not so much that, yes, they are Zimbabweans, so they are also entitled to the farms that Zanu PF leaders are getting. The important thing here is they were being given these farms by Zanu PF for the purpose of buying their cooperation. The people had elected them into power so that they implement the democratic reforms. Zanu PF was giving them these bribes to buy them off, to make them forget about the reforms and dismantling the Zanu PF dictatorship. That is the point. We can't keep on having this endless cycle of leaders who promise to do something, but when they are in a position to actually do it, they forget because of greed, because they are corrupt, because they are mercenary. They've got this mercenary streak in them. This dates back to Zanu PF itself. The war of liberation was fought on the understanding that we're fighting for freedom, for liberty, for justice, for all Zimbabweans. But when Zanu PF leaders got into power, they decided that they could benefit from independent Zimbabwe by making themselves the new slave masters, and so to enslave the rest of us, and so to keep the rest of us, or the majority of us, in poverty. I've just talked about how Zanu PF has deliberately refused to give title deeds to rural areas because the party believes if it was to economically empower the rural people, they will next demand political empowerment. And as a party, Zanu PF considers the rural areas its stronghold. Kept the millions of people in the rural areas poor and dependent on the regime. And now we are seeing a repeat of that. People have risked their lives, their livelihoods, their limbs to elect MDC CCC leaders into power on the understanding that they would implement the democratic reforms designed to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. And instead of getting that, we end up with this situation where Zanu PF bribes the opposition leaders, and they too forget about the people. We have to be very clear what we want here. If we're ever going to end this failed state, this pariah state, we have to deal with a situation where we have got to elect leaders who will implement the reforms designed to end, to dismantle the pariah state, the dictatorship, and not be electing leaders who, as soon as they get into office, they get given a farm, a Porsche car, and they forget about the people. And I think the people themselves have got to be aware why we are a failed state, why we are stuck to this day in this situation. I think in time we are going to hear a lot more about these farms. People like Chamisa and other leaders have not commented on any of these videos that have been circulating. They are hoping that by staying silent, the issue will die. I think we'll be making a big mistake if we let these people off the hook, because it will only mean we'll never get any leader to implement the reforms and end the dictatorship. I therefore urge the people of Zimbabwe to hold Chamisa and company to account. We should not relent in our demands for an explanation. If this is true, this should be a lesson to all Zimbabweans that we need to elect competent leaders who deliver on issues of great national importance without being bribed with benefits to benefit themselves. We don't want mercenary leaders. Anyone who wants a farm should be able to buy a farm on their own merit and not to be using people to elect them into office so that when they are in office, they could go to Zanu PF and say, listen, if you don't want me to do anything about A, B, C, D, bribe me. Because that is exactly what has been happening here. We need competent leaders. Zimbabwe is a failed state and is not going to get out of this mess without seriously looking into these issues. Think about it. We'll be holding the same discussion again tomorrow on this same link. And I hope some of you out there who have got the time, you'll be able to log in and would like to hear from you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.